So I've also just started this being pretty early days, but just wanted to, well, I was painting over an older one, so just painted black at first. Then I've painted in some sort of rough compositional idea. This obviously looks very muddy. Then a bit of graffiti scratching into the surface, give it a bit of movement on the surface. Now I have to wait for it to dry for a while, and then I'm going to try and add some colour. I've got some greens, yellows, blues, red, brown. I don't want to overdo it with the colour, so I'm just going to have this cerulean blue and then add some yellow in a few places, but nothing too strong, and some brown and red, probably mixed down a bit. Possibly a bit of white, probably not. That blue also is quite, needs going over again. Maybe a dry brush over it. Dry brush over it once it's dry. Well, I've got this show coming up called based on 12 Monkeys, so I'm going to try and do something based on that roughly. Abstract ruined composition to represent the ruined city in the film, I think, on some level. I'm not sure. I don't tend to plan my compositions too much. Sometimes I work from studies, sometimes I don't. I want to get back into the looseness of painting a bit, so I've just decided to improvise the composition, as it were, which is what I've been doing here. Is establishing a basic composition. You can tell it looks like a mixture of, there's recognisable objects in there in a way. It also morphs quite a lot. It's this idea I'm quite interested in painting at the minute of morphing, working from an idea of figurative base and then morphing it a bit, basically. So it's, what do you call it? Figurative morphism, or it's not really abstract expressionism because there's too, well, it could be arguably that, I guess. Also, I want to move beyond that too in some respects. So that's that at this stage, just like the first stage, really. That's what it's like now. Just block that colour in a bit more. The light's on a bit there, you can't really tell, but that's something more like becoming a painting now. It's obviously unfinished, but in fact, just after the last bit of painting this, I was thinking this is starting to remind me somewhat of David Lynch's painting work, which is not a connection I've made that much before. I do like his films off of art anyway, and similar, I suppose. I'm going to see where it goes. The figure on the left looks a bit like a monkey to me, somewhat, which might tie in with the theme, but I'm not sure. These blue, almost like claws, marks across the canvas. See where it goes. So I spent about another 30 minutes on it. I'm leaving it now for today. So basically at the minute it isn't really working, I don't think. There's just too much going on. Too much is clashing. The blues and the reds obviously are complementary, which is alright, but it feels like there's too much clashing, so I'm going to have some space for it until probably tomorrow. So obviously this painting I'm working directly from my imagination. I didn't go into it with a plan. Now, one of the drawbacks of doing that, of course, you've got nothing to work from, so you do risk this, what I'm doing now, especially as I'm painting in pasto. Well, relatively in pasto. That's quite an impasto bit. Quite thick paint. It's acrylic, so it dries faster than oil, but it's if I work into that too much now, it's a risk of becoming up mud. It needs some time to dry, work into the surface. There is still a lot I can do with this painting, but I think I'm going to leave it a while, just so I don't overwork it. It already is a bit overworked in some respects. I can still create something out of it. So as obviously it's always creating, you know, is it colour combinations, contrast. At the minute it's failing, but it'll still be saved from the brink, as it were. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that one now. I'm going to work into it tomorrow, leave my stuff. Comment on, so if you are working from imagination often, directly from your imagination without the compositional planned ahead, this is something that can happen where you sort of like, I mean, in a way it's funny because it's like, that's half of what makes it enjoyable, is just going off on one and just doing whatever comes to your head, reacting to events on the canvas. But it can also mean that you know, you overwork certain parts. Like overall, there is a certain logic to, but there's lots of things clashing. That's the thing really at the minute. There's too many things clashing together and not really creating that cohesive composition that I'd like. So I'm going to leave it for a while. There's a certain flow. I mean, you can see here. There's obviously the central motif. And this is quite nice, but then this doesn't really work. It's a bit random. This bit on the left sort of works, but needs work too. This is a bit of a mess at the bottom. So yeah, interesting. Maybe get a few tips if you're an aspiring painter for. But you know, like at the end of the day, like failing, even if this painting's a complete failure, it doesn't really matter that much. Paint over it is a step in something I'm exploring a bit more at the minute, which is like landscape for the imagination again, and with a bit of variation. So yeah, I'm not completely dissatisfied, even if it fails. Failing's part of painting. You have to get ready to do a lot of it, potentially hundreds of failed paintings before you get to paintings which are half decent, or at least we're at least happy with. I'll sign off there.